And welcome to The Center Path. I'm your host, Jay Parker. It's November 8th, 2015. And for the next 2 hours, we'll be discussing news and views. But of course, let's start the Center Path show with our usual memes of the week. And these are social media memes that I post and have on my Facebook page. Governments murdered 262 million disarmed civilians in the 20th century. Anti-statism is a lifesaver. And really think about that. 262 million people, unarmed, innocent people killed by the state. And I mean, you know, communist China, our number one trading partner, and the great Mao Zedong, took care of 80 million people. Yeah, and it's coming here as soon as America gets disarmed. Oh, believe me, they'll do a purge. And so, it was the pink ribbon fiesta in the NFL last month. October is Cancer Awareness Month. Of course, they're making you aware of cancer, not of the fact that they've suppressed every cure for the last 100 years. And there's a great book out called Cancer Vortex that talks about, well, a dozen suppressed cures. And all I gotta say is, cannabis cures cancer. So, in this meme, it's a very nice pink, bright pink marijuana leaf. And it says, October is Cancer Awareness Month. Please be aware that cannabis cures cancer. No doubt about it. Do the research. Go to my website, thecenterpath.weebly.com. Click on the cannabis section and watch a few videos. Go to a few websites. Listen to some testimonials by people who were brought, to their knees by the chemical allopathic medical system. Sent home to die, many of the people, the testimonials I have on my website. And after 12 years of fighting Hodgkin's lymphoma, this one guy decided, well, I'll try Rick Simpson oil. What have I got to lose? He's cancer-free now. There you go. So here's an interesting meme. It's a picture of JFK, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy. And it simply has the caption, "And you call me a conspiracy theorist." When you do the research into every single one of those assassinations in the 60s, you will find government involvement. All right? And here's a nice picture of a building. I believe it's in Manhattan. It's high up above the skyline, and it looks down on this building that has a billboard right next to a highway that's running past the building. And the billboard says, "The French aristocracy never saw it coming either." And it's a little ha-ha, because the aristocracy, or the oligarchs, or the corrupt Illuminati, or the cabal, or whatever you want to call them, in this country, don't see it coming. But blowback is coming. And people are waking up consciously and starting to reprogram their subconscious. And you're going to find that in this consciousness-driven holodeck, the more people they clean up the 40 million bits of information that they transfer into the intelligent field from their subconscious, when they take out the statism, when they take out the belief of authority, simply using EFT, Psyche, you can be the revolution and not lift a finger in public, just by changing the broadcast into the field of your subconscious. And if you don't believe me, well, all I gotta say is go to my website, research Tom Campbell, Bruce Lipton, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and realize that you are more powerful than you have any idea. So here's a nice meme about cannabis oil. One of the oldest and best medicines known to man. Helps with killing cancer, epilepsy, post-traumatic stress disorder, diabetes, Crohn's disease, gout, pain relief, glaucoma, opioid dependence, being Oxycontin out, right? Treating alcohol abuse, insomnia, psoriasis, shingles, anorexia, asthma, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, migraines, Dravet syndrome, multiple sclerosis, and many more conditions. Yeah, especially like COPD cures that, which Leonard Nimoy died this year of COPD. And, Mr. Spock would be with us today, but, we got to keep that cannabis oil illegal. We got to protect ourselves from medicine. And we have to keep taking poison. So I got a couple good articles in the show tonight, going to talk about my favorite subject, the mass murder of the medical mafia. So here's a cute one. Picture of an Indian with a headdress, probably around 1900. When told the reason for daylight savings time, the old Indian said, only the government would believe that you could cut a foot off the top of a blanket, sew it to the bottom, and have a longer blanket. All these memes are on my Facebook page, and if you're not a Facebook page friend of mine, give me a Facebook shout out and become a friend, because I believe I have one of the best feeds out there. It's not all negative, it's not all positive. It's a nice mixture of staying aware, but also keeping our eye on the goal of conscious of this shift. So here's a nice little meme about ISIS and Syria. And there's 3 pictures. And Obama is on the top picture, Putin's in the middle, and Obama is at the bottom. And the captions are, our primary objective in Syria is to defeat ISIS. President Obama. And Putin, with his hand up to his ear, did you say defeat ISIS? We can help with that. And then there's one of a dejected looking Obama. Yeah, well, I must have read that wrong when I said defeat ISIS. What I actually meant was overthrow Assad. And absolutely, why do they want to overthrow Assad? To get an oil pipeline from Saudi Arabia right through Syria. 2, expansion of Greater Israel by the Zionists. And 3, install a Rothschild central bank, which, they don't have that. They don't have freedom. And here's one of Noam Chomsky. Students who acquire large debts putting themselves through school are unlikely to think about changing society. What is that? When you trap people in a system of debt, they can't afford the time to think. Tuition fee increases are a disciplinary technique, and by the time students graduate, they are not only loaded with debt, but they have internalized the disciplinarian culture. This makes them efficient components of the consumer economy. Really, really bad typeset on that one. Hard to read. And my last, it's someone by the name of Mark Passio did this. Satanism, the worship of the ego. The dark occultist justification for evil. From the Latin word occultare, meaning to hide or to conceal. That's what occult means. Doesn't mean negative or evil. The 4 tenets of Satanism. And these are the real tenets of Satanism. Self-preservation, number 1. This includes the preservation of one's agenda and one's group above all. This is in direct opposition to conscience, compassion, and love. Number 2, moral relativism. This denial of the objective difference between right and wrong allows psychopaths to falsely justify their violence and aggression against others. Number 3, social Darwinism. This concept of a social version of survival of the fittest leads to psychopaths to believe that they are the most socially evolved people in society. They actually believe that their lack of compassion and their ruthlessness are evolutionarily superior traits. And number 4, eugenics. Since they consider themselves superior, they believe they have the right to decide who lives and who dies. So that was our memes of the week, and I hope you enjoyed that. So here's an article from Forbes magazine. Came out July 10th, 2015, but I just have to tell you about this because it's so delicious. Florida cops laundered millions for drug cartels, failed to make a single arrest. This is by Nick Sabilla, contributor. Posing as money launderers, police in Bal Harbour and Glades County, Florida, laundered a staggering $71.5 million for drug cartels in an undercover sting operation. According to an in-depth investigation by the Miami Herald, with fake IDs, undercover officers made deals to pick up cash from criminal organizations in cities across the country. Agents then delivered the money to the Miami-Dade storefronts, even wired cash to banks overseas in China and Panama. After laundering the cash, police would skim a 3% commission fee, ultimately generating $2.4 million for themselves. If you think of all the money that's being made from drugs, at some point it has to be cleaned up and become legit, remarked Finn Solander, a former DEA agent and a member of the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. But unless proper precautions are taken, sting operations can backfire and come back to bite you in the proverbial ass. Together, the Bal Harbour Police Department and the Glades County Sheriff's Office formed the Tri-County Task Force, which, despite the name, consisted only of 2 agencies. From 2010 to 2012, the task force passed on information and tips to the federal agencies that led to the government seizing almost $30 million. Yet the undercover unit laundered over $70 million for the drug cartels, more than twice as much as what was actually taken off the streets. Notably, the Tri-County Task Force never made a single arrest. The task force countered that assertion, claiming they passed on intelligence that led to over 200 arrests made by other agencies. But a representative from the DEA said, "There's no way we can validate those numbers. We have no idea what they are basing those numbers on." Tellingly, the task force did not document the names of the 200 people who were arrested, according to the Miami Herald. Thanks to the commissions from money laundering, the task force could indulge in lavish lifestyle. Officers enjoyed $1,000 dinners at restaurants in the Miami area and spent $116,000 on airfare and first-class flights, and nearly $60,000 for hotel accommodations, including stays at the Bellagio and the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas and El San Juan Resort and Casino in Puerto Rico. Police also spent over $100,000 on iPads, computers, laptops, and other electronics. Bought a new Jeep Grand Cherokee for $42,000 and even purchased $25,000 worth of weaponry, including FNP-9 submachine guns. Bal Harbour, a seaside village of 2,500 residents, amazing, just amazing. 2,500 residents, known for having the nation's top sales-generating mall, reported just one violent crime in 2012. Well, I'm going to get into a couple articles relating to one of my favorite subjects, the Illuminati and their addiction to pedophilia. And this is from childabuserecovery.com. Nicole Kidman's father dies amid pedophile child murder ring allegations. And this came out September 14th, 2014. But the thing I want to say is, people in Hollywood, the Illuminati controls Hollywood. And as I keep saying in my podcasts and in my radio shows and my lectures, that pedophilia is a sacrament to the dark occult. It's what they get addicted to. It's what they do to serve their demonic entities. Their entities, when raping a child, energetically take them over, possess them, and these demons have a way of sucking the energy out of the child during sex, and they feed that way. And because you allow yourself to be possessed by entities and allow them to feed off of a child you're raping, you get information from the entities, and the Illuminati do things for you so that you make money and you prosper. Anthony Kidman died Friday after fleeing Australia when accused of sexual abuse and murder of children in an elite Sydney pedophile ring. A month prior, Fiona Barrett had filed a complaint with the Australian New South Wales Police and the Child Abuse Royal Commission, alleging Kidman's sexual and physical assaults on her throughout childhood. When the commission opened an investigation, the clinical psychologist suddenly left his 43 years with Sydney University of Technology and Royal North Shore Hospital to stay in Singapore until he died. The family has refused to comment, and Singapore police opened an investigation on what they termed as an unnatural death. Yesterday, Barnett released her own theory about Kidman's death. And this is Fiona Barnett, who's one of the pedophile whistleblowers in Australia. The main perpetrator of my child sexual abuse, Anthony Kidman, is dead after I filed formal complaints accusing him of rape, torture, and murder of children in an exclusive Sydney pedophile ring. As a child victim of mind control, I feel he's been sacrificed for failing to adequately program me. And this is true. If you can't handle your charges in the Illuminati mind control system, the handlers do get in trouble, because they don't like it when people break their programming and come forward. Kidman was responsible for ensuring that I never disclosed pedophile ring activities and that I witnessed as a child, she continued. He failed. News of Kidman's death impacted me. Someone who has undergone intense treatment, I know that there are other victims of Kidman's crimes out there who are perhaps not as far along the healing path as I am. I anticipate that news of Kidman's death may have a serious impact on these victims. A perpetrator's death can even trigger suicidal problems with the victim. Terrible. My complaints last month to the Australian Child Abuse Royal Commission detailed 2 instances which Kidman subjected me to horrific physical and sexual assault, Barnett said. But there are even more serious crimes against children that I witnessed Kidman commit as a member of the elite Sydney pedophile ring. Those complaints have gone to the International Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels. Barnett spoke out on the day of Kidman's death, White Balloon Day 2014, an event aimed at raising awareness for Australian children affected by sexual assault. She stated, "My contribution to White Balloon Day 2014 is to urge my fellow victims of crime to fight the filth that this monster deposited in their minds, and if they can muster the strength, join me in my effort to give a voice to the victims who are no longer with us." The ICLCJ court has been looking into Barnett's allegations against Kidman in relationship to an investigation of global elite Ninth Circle satanic child sacrifice cult. Over 60 witnesses, such as Barnett, have testified of Ninth Circle child sacrifice and pedophile activities that span the globe, including criminal activities against children in the Americas, Netherlands, and UK Commonwealth, such as Australia. The Ninth Circle was also said to have been a well-organized and secretive human hunting parties that included pedophilia. Privately owned forest groves were believed to be used in the US, Canada, France, and Holland. It appeared children and teens were obtained by criminal drug syndicate Octopus, which was believed connected to the Vatican. The kidnapped children and teens were said to be stripped naked, raped, hunted down, and killed. Since the tender age of 3, Barnett has been trapped inside Australia's vast pedophile network, where children were sex trafficked, hunted down for sport and murdered. In the late afternoon of October 28, 1975, I was taken to my 6th birthday party in the Crimea rainforest, Barnett said. The cordial was spiked with drugs. I fell asleep. When I awoke, it was dark and I was lying naked, face up, spread eagle, on a picnic table with my hands and legs tied. Perpetrators took turns sneaking up on me. A large group of men arrived in pickup trucks. They carried rifles and they had a pack of starving Doberman dogs. I was told that the group of naked children huddled nearby were my responsibility. I was to run and hide them. Every child I failed to hide would be killed and fed to the dogs. They painted something on my back and chest and then released us. I pushed the children up over the first steep hill. It was about the second or third hill that the hunting party reached us. Shots were fired and children began dropping all around me. With all hope lost of my saving the other children, I took off and ran for my life. Dutch therapist Toos Nengerholis testified at the ICLCJ court that as a child, and like Barrett, she had been badly abused and forced to witness child murders that involved global elites, claimed throughout childhood torture at Barnett's same Australian Halsworthy Army base, and like Barnett, was a victim of human hunting parties. Nahalagious perpetrators included former Pope Joseph Ratzinger, Dutch Catholic Cardinal Afrique, and Bilderberger founder Prince Bernhard. Nahalagious explained to the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State Secretary Reverend Kevin Arnett her witness to child sacrifices as late as 2010. The Ninth Circle satanic child sacrifice cult could easily hide crimes of their global elite members. They were well trained by Hitler's mind control experts from Nazi Germany. Barrett's Nazi grandfather's pedophile network was said to include clinical psychologists such as Kidman and John W. Gittinger, who developed a popular test among psychiatric professionals known as the Personality Assessment System. In the Independent Australian News, Barrett stated, as a young child, Gittinger abused and raped me. In another article in the Independent Australian News, it was reported that Barrett's dramatic testimony put members in tears when she went before the Australian Royal Commission into child sexual abuse. Barrett had named her perpetrators her grandfather, Kidman, two former Australian Prime Ministers, a Parliament House Governor General, and a State Police Commissioner. As with child pedophile rings in Netherlands, Europe, Canada, and the U.S., the Australian pedophile network was said to include police officers, psychiatrists, biochemists, psychologists, actors, writers, politicians, university lecturers, and medical doctors. The commission was in the process of investigating my complaint when Kidman was found to have left the country, Barnett said. Now, 1 month following my notification against Kidman, he is dead. Kidman's death comes as no surprise. In the past week alone, 2 people predicted his imminent demise. This article is dedicated to the victims of the Vatican and the mafia-run global elite Ninth Circle satanic child sacrifice cult, and to the memory of the over 50,800 missing children, some of whom rest in 34 mainly Catholic-owned unmarked mass graves that have been refused excavation across Canada, Ireland, and Spain. And the author is Judy Billington. So. Yeah, it's something to grow up in a place like Arden, Delaware, where 91% of the people are pedophiles. I mean, it'll blow your mind. You know, when people hear me talk about this, they're like, it can't be true. But it's more than true. So let's talk about one of the most famous pedophiles, mass murderers out there, the Queen of England. The strange story of the Queen and the children who disappeared from the native residential schools. In September 1964, when I was 12 years old, I was an inmate at the Clamloo School, where we were visited by the Queen of England and Prince Philip. I remember it was strange because they came by themselves, no fanfare or nothing. But I recognized them, and the school principal told us it was the Queen, and we all got given new clothes and good food for the first time in months the day before she arrived. And this is written Thursday, the 1st of April, 2010. Signed statement of survivor witnesses, followed by copy of letter already given to the Queen in January 2008 by residential school survivors in Canada. Statement of William Arnold Combe. I am an interior cellist spirit dancer and I am 58 years old. I live in Vancouver, Canada. I am a survivor of the Kamloops and Mission Indian residential schools, both run by the Roman Catholic Church. I suffered terrible tortures there at the hands especially of Brother Murphy, who killed at least 2 children. I witnessed him throw a child off a 3-story balcony toward death. He put me on a rack and broke some of my bones in the Kamloops school basement after I tried running away. I also saw him and another priest burying a child in the school orchard one night. In September 1964, when I was 12 years old, I was an inmate of the Kamloops School, and we were visited by the Queen of England and Prince Philip. I remember it was strange because they came by themselves, no big fanfare, and we received new clothes and good food for the first time in months the day before they arrived. The day she got to the school, I was part of a group of kids that went on a picnic with the Queen and her husband and school officials down to a meadow near Dead Man's Creek. After a while, I saw the Queen leave the picnic with 10 children from the school, and those children never returned. We never heard anything more about them and never saw them again, even when we were older. They were all from around there, but they all vanished. The group that disappeared was 7 boys and 3 girls, in age from 6 to 14 years old. I don't remember their names, just an occasional first name like Celia, and there was an Edward. What happened was also witnessed by my friend George Adolph, who was 11 years old at the time and a student there too. Interesting, huh? Queen of England issued letter of demand, possible lawsuit by Indian residential school survivors. Evening on Thursday, January 24th, 2008. Elizabeth Windsor, the Queen of England, was issued a letter of demand yesterday that requires she identify the fate and the burial sites of all children who died in the Indian residential schools established under the authority of the Church of England and the British Crown. The letter was handed personally to the Governor-General, Michelle Jean, by the Aboriginal elder Carol Martin at the Downtown Eastside Women's Center in Vancouver in the afternoon of Wednesday, January 23rd. Miss Martin asked the Governor-General to deliver the letter of demand to the Queen on behalf of the residential school survivors, and the Governor-General accepted the letter and assured that she would. As a common law notice, the letter requires the Queen to comply with the request to identify grave sites and cause of death of these children within 30 days or face possible legal action. The buck stops at Buckingham Palace, commented another Aboriginal elder and residential school survivor. The Queen and the Pope are the ones responsible for the genocide their government and churches did to my people. She has to be held accountable. She has the power to bring our children home finally. In recent weeks, similar letters of demand have been issued to officials of the Canadian government and the Roman Catholic and Anglican churches and the United Church of Canada by residential school survivors. Karl Ratzinger, Pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, is scheduled to be issued similar letter of demand soon. The National Press Conference to announce the next stage of the Truth Campaign will be held Monday, February 4th at 10 a.m. outside the Prime Minister's office at 80 Wellington Street, Ottawa. Organizer Kevin Arnett will be present for this event. And so this is what I'm talking about, is they have over 50,000 children from these Canadian Indian schools that have disappeared off the face of the earth. And they were nothing but Illuminati, Satanist, pedophile feeding organizations. You could come, pick up the kids, and that would be the end of that. It's just amazing. Continuing. This is from the Telegraph in London. It's dated November 1st, 2015. Sex offenders, including pedophiles, should be allowed to adopt, Theresa May told. And Theresa May is the Home Secretary of the British government. Rules which bar sex offenders from working with children are unfair, and even convicted pedophiles should have the right to adopt, a leading legal academic has said. This is written by Rosa Prince, political correspondent. Helen Rees, a reader in law at the London School of Economics, called on Theresa May, the Home Secretary, to relax rules which automatically ban sex offenders from caring for children, saying that this could breach their human rights. In an article to the respected Child and Family Law Quarterly, Ms. Reese suggested that reoffending rates were not high among sex criminals, adding, despite growing public concern over pedophilia, the numbers of child sex murders are very low. Yeah, considering that the whole thing is hushed up. I can tell you for a fact, the Illuminati's killing kids left and right. A review is currently ongoing into the vetting and barring scheme, introduced following the horrific 2002 Shoreham murders, amid concerns by ministers that it is too heavy-handed. So they are going and looking into the vetting and barring scheme, which is in the law right now, and seeing if it's too heavy-handed. As well as banning certain offenders, the law currently requires adults coming into regular contact with children other than their own to be screened. Mrs. May ordered the review amid concerns about the vetting of ordinary volunteers such as parents who drive children to football practice and church flower arrangers. In her article, Ms. Reese suggested that the review should also introduce an assumption that sex offenders, including child abusers, posed no threat once they had served their sentence. She said, "There is no reason why all sex offenders should not be considered as potentially suitable to adopt or foster children or work with them. The vetting and barring scheme and other legislative measures single out sex offenders for unfair special treatment, and they destroy the principle that a prisoner pays his or her debt by serving their sentence before re-entering society on equal terms. Individuals are placed on the barred list and banned from working with youngsters or vulnerable adults if they are convicted of sexual or violent offense, or one involving the mistreatment of a child. Ms. Reese criticized the rules for leading all sex offenders to be tarred with the same brush, saying that while careful screening was important, the issue of a blanket ban violated the rights of criminals who wanted to adopt or work with young people. She highlighted the case of a grandfather with a conviction for having sex with a 15-year-old dating back to when he was 29, who was refused permission to adopt his own grandchildren. The ban could contravene the principle of non-discrimination enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights, and may leave the government open to legal challenge, Ms. Reese said. Comparing sex offenders to cohabitating couples, she suggested that if blanket bans on the former were allowed, it would make sense to bar those who were not married from adopting, because parents who were wed were less likely to separate with harmful consequences for the child. She also highlighted the case of 4 nurses who recently won a high court challenge after being barred for having convictions. One of the nurses was barred over a police caution for leaving her own children alone in their home. Rather than presuming that everyone is a potential risk to children and must therefore be vetted, any vetting or barring should be based on very strong evidence that they are a risk, the academic said. This would represent a victory not only for human rights, but for the protecting the best interests of the children. And this is a Ms. Reese who is saying that the government should allow pedophiles, once convicted and having served their sentences, to adopt small children. She's a lawyer, and that's what they do. That's why our society is the way it is. On my Facebook page is a little notice called 21 Books That Are Banned. ActivistPost.com did a thing where they listed 21 books that the elite don't want you to read. They're really not banned, but they ought to, because a lot of these you will not find in public libraries because it's information that they do not want you to have. At number 21 is the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was a cousin of Sigmund Freud, and this man wrote this book back in the 40s, I believe, and it is the Bible according to mass media manipulation. Edward Bernays' Propaganda. Number 20, Big Brother, the Orwellian Nightmare Come True by Mark Dice. Dice, for all you have to say about his pro-Christian stance and his kind of narrow-mindedness in that respect, he really does do his homework when it comes to reading and studying about the machine that is the New World Order. Number 19, What I Saw the Day Israel's June 8, 1967 Holocaust of U.S. servicemen aboard the USS Liberty and its aftermath. Well, right there, the reason you're not going to find that book is the title. Philip Turney was an eyewitness, a U.S. petty officer, and he was there during the 2-hour-plus attack on the USS Liberty, which I think they killed, the Israelis killed dozens. So the book's name is What I Saw the Day Israel's June 8, 1967 Holocaust of U.S. servicemen aboard the USS Liberty and its aftermath. Do some research onto the Liberty. It's a heck of a story because Lyndon Johnson was screaming on the phone that he wanted the Liberty at the bottom of the ocean. Because the plan was that the Israelis would sink the U.S. Liberty, then they'd blame it on the Egyptians. This is during the 1967 war. And then that would give the Americans the right to invade Egypt. The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope by Sheriff Richard Mack. And if you don't know about the fact that the jurisdiction of the sheriff is the number one jurisdiction in the legal power and responsibility to defend the citizens, Richard Mack in this book will tell you all about it. Sheriffs are extremely powerful. Number 17, Corporatism, The Secret Government of the New World Order by Jeffrey Grupp. Corporations control all basic resources of the world, all the governments and institutions, and prevent us from solving humanity's problems. Their New World Order plan is global prison planet that Hitler was aiming for. Absolutely true. 16. Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins, where he goes through how the IMF rapes and just destroys the third world through debt and these loans of the World Bank and the IMF. If you don't want to get the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman, there's plenty of John Perkins interviews on YouTube. Number 15, JFK, the CIA, Vietnam, and the plot to assassinate John F. Kennedy, second edition, by L. Fletcher Prouty. Fletcher Prouty was one of the guys that helped Oliver Stone in the movie JFK. And this book was probably the hallmark JFK conspiracy book for years. But I believe that if you really wanted to get a little bit deeper, get a book by Professor James Fetzer. Even Jim Mars's Crossfire, because they're much written much later and a lot more information has come out. Number 14, Where Did the Towers Go? Evidence of Directed Free Energy Technology on 9/11. Dr. Judy Wood and Eric Larson. And I have to say, there's a 2-hour talk by Judy Wood on YouTube. Where did the towers go? You watch that and you tell me they didn't use Tesla technology. Oh, I'm sure there was thermite cutting the beams. There's no doubt. In order for the Tesla tech, free energy weaponry to dissolve the buildings, like the concrete just turned into fine powdered dust. I mean, nanoparticulate thermite, which, you can see the thermite cut beams all over the pictures of 9/11 at Ground Zero. It's the angled box column cut. It's cut on a 45-degree angle. And so, in order for the Tesla technology weapons to be used, they had to cut all the main pillars that was grounding the building. So once the building's not grounded, then the high-tech Tesla scalar wave technology can be used to cause the dustification of the building. So Tragedy and Hope is number 13. That's written by Carol Quigley, a professor at Georgetown University and the mentor of President Bill Clinton. 1,300 pages was the original book. I don't know what they're selling it at now. Talks all about the New World Order and the Anglo-Saxon corporate empire, how they want to take over the world and control humanity from cradle to grave. 12, one of the greatest books ever written. None Dare Call It Conspiracy. And this is by Gary Allen. It's just 197 pages, but he breaks down every control mechanism in the New World Order. Amazing book. American Assassination, The Strange Death of Senator Paul Wellstone. And this is a James Fetzer book. And there's no doubt in my mind that they used magnesium to literally burn up his plane. That plus probably some high-tech weaponry, handheld high-tech weaponry. There's Tesla's technology out there, out the wazoo. And number 10, the new complete book of self-sufficiency by John Seymour, packed with comprehensive information on all practical, from plowing fields to milking cows, create an urban organic garden, harness natural energy. This full-color edition is illustrated classic and is an engrossing read and a wonderful handbook for realists and dreamers alike. Something we all will need real soon once the dollar collapses in January. And when the BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, South Africa, Brazil, blah, 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 when they develop their own Bank of International Settlements, which will be in January of 2016, the American dollar will be toast. Human Race, Get Off Your Knees by David Icke. I recommend all of David Icke's books, especially some of his 700-page tomes from like 10 years ago, like Children of the Matrix, The Biggest Secret. Real good history so you can get an overview of our society. Number 8, the 9/11 Commission Report, Omissions and Distortions by David Ray Griffith. One of the best take-aparts of the 9/11 Commission Report. David Ray Griffin. Excellent, excellent mind. Just tore it a new one. Number 7, 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read by Jesse Ventura. The official spin on numerous government programs is flat out BS, according to Jesse Ventura. Ventura proves beyond any doubt this incredible collection of actual government documents, including previously classified papers that were brought into public domain by WikiLeaks. He scours through this treasure trove of documents to bring you light on how we've been duped into wars we shouldn't be fighting, lied to about intelligence, fed hogwash about terrorism, and tricked into losing more and more of our civil liberty. In addition to providing original government data, Ventura explains what it really means. Number 6, Stranger Than Fiction by Albert D. Pastore. This true story behind 9/11. Ain't that the truth? 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in USA. First edition, Webster Griffin Tarpley. And there's a man that you can do a YouTube search on. Webster Tarpley is one of the best historians and researchers out there. He doesn't play around at all. Number 4, Snitch Culture. How Citizens Are Turned into the Eyes and Ears of the State by Jim Redden. Number 3, The Creature from Jekyll Island. A Second Look at the Federal Reserve by G. Edward Griffin. I mean, to read this book, and I read it, The Creature from Jekyll Island, is amazing that the government and the business people just got together and colluded to totally destroy America. It's amazing. Number 2, War at Home. Covert Action Against the U.S. Activists and What We Can Do About It. Brian Glick. This book was written in 1989. It provides thorough coverage and analysis of the FBI's COINTELPRO. And number 1 book, Winter Soldier, Iraq and Afghanistan. Eyewitness accounts of the occupations. And it's written by Iraq Veterans Against the War. This is from CBC Radio. Can trauma have genetic effects across generations? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report on residential schools in Canada laid out the neglect and abuse of Aboriginal children and youth were put through. Studies have shown that trauma might have an effect not only on the person experiencing the trauma, but also on subsequent generations via their DNA. Brent speaks with Amy Bombay, assistant professor of psychiatry at Dalhousie University, on the possible implications. Here's a good article from sustainablepulse.com. And GM crops now banned in 38 countries worldwide. How do you like that? Following the recent wave of genetically modified crop cultivation bans across the European Union, Sustainable Pulse decided to research which countries have decided to officially ban the cultivation of GM crops around the globe. This research has led to the discovery that there is a growing swell of government-level support worldwide for bans on GM crop cultivation with both health and environmental reasons. 38 countries worldwide have officially banned the cultivation of GM crops, and only 28 actually grow GM crops, most of which grow under 500,000 hectares. The picture painted by the biotech industry and the U.S. government that GM crops have been accepted by the majority of countries worldwide is therefore quite obviously wrong. In fact, many countries have recently started to put in place regulations to protect their population and environment from the environmental and health damage caused by GM crops. Sustainable Pulse welcomes additions or edits to the list below from readers, experts, and from around the globe. Africa. The picture on GM cultivation bans across Africa is not clear due to the current pressure being put on many African governments by the biotech industry and the Gates Foundation to lift long-standing bans on import of unmilled GMO seeds or unmilled GMO food aid. However, 2 countries still have full legal bans on GM crop cultivations, and they are Algeria and Madagascar. Asia, there are 4 that have banned GM: Turkey, Kyrgyzstan, Bhutan, and Saudi Arabia. In the Americas, Belize, Peru, Ecuador, and Venezuela have banned GM. Europe, 28. Ain't that something, huh? Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Malta, Cyprus, Greece, Bulgaria, Russia, Serbia, Croatia, Italy, Denmark, Hungary, Moldova, Latvia, Lithuania, Austria, Poland, Slovenia, Azerbaijan, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Luxembourg, Ukraine, although there is massive GM contamination in the country, Norway, and Switzerland. Well, all I gotta say is congratulations. Because it has been proven that you get DNA damage from eating GM. Our DNA and the fact that we're in this field, this is what we should be researching. How do we react in this energetic field with our DNA? We're epigenetic creatures. Our heart-mind opens or closes our DNA code. Our DNA can be reprogrammed by words in certain frequencies. And this is from ancientcode.com. This article is based on the book Versatility Intelligence, Networked Intelligence. Russian scientists have shown that our DNA can actually be reprogrammed by words and certain frequencies. According to scientists, only 10% of our DNA is being used for building proteins. It is this subset of DNA where researchers are pointing their investigations to. They plan to review and classify it again, and they hope to learn something very interesting in the process. The remaining 90% of DNA is considered junk DNA. I know that many won't agree with the terms such as junk DNA, but let us continue. Increasingly, a couple of years ago, new formulas from Russian scientists specialized in biophysics and molecular biology showed that 7% of our DNA has a higher purpose and is not in any way junk. According to newer studies, the human DNA is a biological internet far superior than anything artificial. Russian biophysicist and molecular biologist Pyotr Garnichev and his fellow scientists involved in the research exposed that, directly or indirectly, phenomena such as clairvoyance, intuition, spontaneous and remote acts of healing, self-healing, affirmation techniques, unusual light auras around people, namely spiritual masters, mind's influence on weather patterns, and much more. In addition, there is evidence for a whole type of medicine in which our DNA can be influenced and reprogrammed by words and frequencies without cutting out or replacing single genes. There are 6 main research points. 2 different branches of science were used and fused together, linguistics and genetics, to explore the 90% of junk DNA. Their results, findings, and conclusions. Our DNA is not only responsible for building our body, but also serves as data storage and communication. The Russian linguists found that the genetic code, especially in the apparently useless 90%, follows the same rules as our human languages. To this end, they compared the rules of syntax and the way words are put together to form phrases and sentences. semantics, the study of meaning in language forms, and the basic rules of grammar. Researchers were able to find out that the alkalines of our DNA follow a regular grammar and do have a set rules, just like our languages. So human languages did not appear coincidentally, but are a reflection of our inherent DNA. Researchers also explored the vibrational behavior of DNA. They were able to dine out that living chromosomes function just like photonic holographic computers using the endogenous DNA laser radiation. This means they managed to modulate certain frequency patterns into a laser ray and with it influenced the DNA frequency and thus the genetic information itself. The basic structure of DNA alkaline pairs and language is of the same structure. Without a doubt, the more you study about human physiology, frequency, the universal intelligent field that we exist in, it's just going to change your mind. It's going to change your consciousness, make you realize that there's so much to learn. There's so much understanding just about your own physiology, your own emotional capacity. Years of study. But I want to talk about one of my favorite subjects right now. I want to get into cannabis and cannabis prohibition a little bit because I've been recently talking to people, and I travel in circles of people that are somewhat aware, and they have no idea about the medicinal effects of cannabis. They really don't. I mean, we're talking about a sea of ignorance. Don't ask me why. It all has to do with as long as you do not deprogram your subconscious, okay, and really get in there with a energy psychology under matrix programming. It's just that simple. So the choice is yours. Get into the subconscious and rip out those enculturalization programs or suffer the consequences. And one of the main consequences of the enculturalization program in your subconscious that you did not choose to be the arbitrator of 95% of your adult life is ignorance, because it doesn't take a rocket science to realize that the schools and the oligarchs and the governments wanted people to be as ignorant as possible. And in the enculturalization program is a I don't want to know, I don't care program. And that's the ignorance enculturalization program you need to rip out of your subconscious. And it's amazing how many people in the peace and freedom and truth movement still haven't done any subconscious repatterning. Zero. But enough of me griping. I'm going to get into some really good information on cannabis now. Here's an article from whydon'tyoutrythis.com. Juicing raw cannabis. Cannabis, whether sativa, indica, rudikalis, male, female, hermaphrodite, wild, bred for fiber, seeds, or medicinal resin, is a vegetable with every dietary essential we can't synthesize. Essential amino acids, essential fatty acids, essential cannabinoid acids, and hundreds of anti-cancer compounds. And let me note here that there are 22,000 cannabis-related medical studies on the PubMed website of the U.S. government. So when they sit there, like Governor Chris Christie, and deny medical cannabis to the thousands of dying cancer patients in their state, I mean, hundreds of thousands. I mean, we're talking about losing 758,000 people this year alone to cancer, when in fact the cure is known and has been known since 1974. So to sit there and say, well, we need to research this more, there's 22,000 cannabis research papers on PubMed, the government's own website. And the government studies in the 70s done by Nixon confirmed that THC and CBD killed cancer cells. And so since 1974, when those studies were finished, the government and the pharmaceutical industry, which controls the government policy at the FDA, have willfully committed the murder of a minimum of 17 million Americans. Murder for money. Cannabis clinician Dr. William Courtney recommends drinking 4 to 8 ounces of bud and leaf juice any hemp plant, 5 milligrams of CBD per kilogram of body weight, a salad of hemp seed sprouts, 50 milligrams of THC daily, divided into 5 doses with a anacoridic acid source such as hemp seed oil. If you heat the plant, you will decarbonate THC acid and you will get high. You'll get your 10 milligrams if you don't heat it. You can go up to 5 to 600 milligrams and use it as a dietary cannabis and push it up to the antioxidant and neuroprotective levels which come into play at hundreds of milligrams. The amount of cannabinoids we need would be difficult to get through smoked cannabis without feeling the intoxicating effect, said Christine Courtney. The endocannabinol system, ECS, maintains our biological systems by regulating each cell tissue. It uses androcannabinic acid and omega-6 to make endocannabinols, fatty molecules that communicate harm between cells. Dietary cannabis mimics the endocannabinol system by providing cannabinoids when there are an androcannabinic acid deficiency or clinical cannabinoid deficiency. The body regulates best when it's saturated with phytocannabinoids, which takes 3 months of dietary cannabis use. Patients exceeding 4 decades need dietary cannabis daily. Patients using blood pressure, birth control, epilepsy, antipsychotic, or any cardiac medicines need more dietary cannabis to elevate their serum cannabinoid levels. Oxidative diseases and amphetamine, radiation, and alcohol damage can be prevented or treated with cannabinoid therapy. Cannabinoids are particularly effective in the treatment of oxidative-associated diseases of the CNS because they cross the blood-brain barrier and exert their antioxidant effects. Hemp juice has lowered blood pressure in an average of 10 points within 2 hours. Patients suffering from end-stage cancer need to eat buds whole. Plants sprayed with anything shouldn't be juiced, but some pests are edible, such as spider mites. To prepare leaves for a juicer, avoid rinsing. Soak them in water for about 5 minutes. Masticating juicers are efficient for leaves. Buds and sprouts, a centrifugal juicer, may need additional vegetables to chop fibers. To preserve juice, fill containers so that the air is minimized. A dose of juice frozen in an ice cube tray retains medicinal value. A sprout's prophylactic, analgesic, antioxidant, and activities peak within 1 to 2 weeks. For CBD without dysphoria from THC psychoactivity, heat bud for 166 degrees with the heat gun. The longer a bud is boiled, the less THC remains. D9 THC boils at 157 degrees centigrade. D8 THC boils at 175 degrees centigrade. CBD boils at 188 degrees centigrade. Drinking heated juice for THC is more potent because there is less vaporization, adhesion, and degradation to decrease potency. When calculating a dose of heated juice from a new strain, make sure to begin with smaller doses. The amount of THC in a cup of juice can exceed 100 joints worth, which could leave one unconscious for a number of days. And even heated leaves can be psychoactive. The 20 milligram dose of THC causes most patients to stagger. After 30 milligrams of THC, most are unable or unwilling to stand. The hemp plant is actually an excellent plant because THC content can be low. That's if you're treating a condition which appears CBD food supplement is in order. The plants using in Luxembourg only have 1% CBD. A 1% CBD plant is providing you with 19 times more CBD per pound than oranges provide you with vitamin C. A 1% is an excellent source. You can make tremendous concentrates. You can eat the plant raw. The absence of THC, you can heat hemp, which you can't do with other strains because THC acid comes out and you end up with a psychotoxic substance. Viable hemp seed from the Detox Your World, Happily Raw websites approach pure CBD, steam, or UV sterilized hemp seeds sprout at lower germination rates, such as seeds from nuts.com, Avian Organics, Persiccone Parasites websites. Canadian hemp seed oil contains 10 milligrams per kilogram of CBD. Swiss and Finland sourced hemp seed oil can contain up to 50 milligrams of THC per kilogram. Swiss hemp essential oil contains 540 milligrams of CBD and 3 milligrams each of CBD, CBG, and CBN per kilogram with no acids. Raw cannabis produces non-psychoactive acidic cannabinoids. It's medicinal at lower doses than heated preparations because constituents have the entourage effect when they act synergistically. 90% of medicinal constituents are destroyed with heat, such as terpenoids, which can greatly prolong the amount of time cannabinol affects our body. It's the poster child of raw food. Acidic cannabinoids are absorbed by our body 400% better than neutral cannabinoids and do not require a cannabinoid receptor to produce medicinal activity. Neutral cannabinoids are the product of aging, heat, or light. THC, the only psychoactive group of cannabinoids, and other neutral cannabinoids are barely present in raw cannabis. There are 16 possible classes of cannabinoids and over 100 cannabinoids in each trichome, in ratio that changes throughout development in various cultivars. Each act differently. CBD acid has antibiotic activity, but CBD doesn't. Here's another article from WhyDon'tYouTryThis.com, and Saturday, March 30th, 2013. As I've been saying, this information is out on the web, and 5 minutes worth of research will show you that cannabis is the most medicinal plant in the world. Cannabis produces homeostasis, which means you don't get cancer, you don't get leukemia, you don't get heart disease, you don't get obesity. It is the death of the medical establishment. If we had cannabis freedom like in 1936, we'd all be growing our own cannabis and juicing it daily to maintain and have homeostasis in which our health would be perfect and we wouldn't need the medical establishment. The data is very strong. Cannabis plant extract stops cancers from spreading. The data is very strong and there's no toxicity associated with a compound found in cannabis. Could halt the spread of many forms of aggressive cancer, scientists say. The first cancer research to show marijuana's anti-tumor properties was presented at the American Association for Cancer Research meeting in Los Angeles in 2007, demonstrating that THC may activate biological pathways that halt cancer cell division or block development of blood cells that feed tumors. 2007, the first time it was brought before the AMA Cancer Research. They've known since 1974 that cancer and cannabis don't go together. That cannabis cures cancer. They've known since 74. It then became a target of synthetic research into THC for drugs such as M-Clone Systems Incorporated's Ibutrex and Amgen's Vectibix. Okay, it's all about the big pharma companies making synthetics of the natural compounds that are found in the cannabis plant so that you have to pay out the ass for a weed. That's right, it's all about murder for money. Researchers have now found that the compound called cannabidiol had the ability to switch off the gene responsible for metastasis in the aggressive form of breast cancer. Importantly, this substance does not produce the psychoactive properties of the cannabis plant. Well, it's amazing to me, okay, that we're talking about 2007, they've known that this stuff stops cancer dead in its tracks. Rick Simpson has known for 15 years that this substance stops cancer dead in its tracks. And yet, 758,000 people will die this year in America and Canada from cancer. Researchers have now found that the compound called cannabidiol had the ability to switch off the gene responsible for metastasis in an aggressive form of breast cancer. Importantly, this substance does not produce the psychoactive properties of the cannabis plant. Researchers have now found that the compound called cannabidiol had the ability to switch off the gene responsible for metastasis in an aggressive form of breast cancer. Importantly, this substance does not produce the psychoactive properties of the cannabis plant. The team from the California Pacific Medical Center in San Francisco first spotted its potential 5 years ago after it stopped the proliferation of human breast cancer cells in the lab. Last year, they published a study that found a similar effect in mice. Now they say they are on the verge of publishing further animal study results that expand these results further. Non-psychoactive cannabinoids, such as cannabidiol, are particularly advantageous because they avoid the toxicity that is encountered with psychoactive cannabinoids at high doses useful in the method of present intervention. CBD, cannabidiol, is one of the main constituents of the cannabis plant, has been proven medically to relieve many diseases, including the inhibition of cancer cell growth. Recent studies have shown it to be an effective atypical antipsychotic in treating schizophrenia. CBD also interferes with the amount of THC in your brain processes, balancing the psychoactive effect of marijuana. That is precisely why the power of raw cannabis is turning heads. Speaking to the San Francisco Chronicle, co-study leader Dr. Sheen McAllister said, "The preclinical trial data is very strong, and there's no toxicity. There's really a lot of research to move ahead with and to get people excited." While he, along with colleagues Dr. Pierre Despes, acknowledged that they are some way off from turning their findings into a pill, they are already developing human trial models. They hope to eventually test the drug in combination with chemotherapy. What a joke. What a bunch of bought and paid for big pharma shills. Professor Dispenza had previously found that a protein called ID1 seemed to play a role in causing breast cancer to spread. Meanwhile, Dr. McAllister had discovered that cannabidiol had anti-cancer potential. The pair teamed up to see what they could treat a particularly aggressive form of breast cancer called triple negative. This form, which affects 15% of patients, doesn't have 3 hormone receptors that most successful therapies target. Cells from this cancer have high levels of ID1. When they exposed the cells from this cancer to cannabidiol, they were shocked to find the cells not only stopped acting crazy, but also returned to a normal, healthy state. They discovered that the compound had turned off the overexpression of ID1, stopping them from traveling to distant tissues. Other potentially treatable cancers are forms of leukemia, lung, ovarian, and brain cancers, which have high levels of ID1. Dr. Despes has a particular reason for wanting to create a treatment as quickly as possible. His sister was recently diagnosed with aggressive form of breast cancer at the age of 41. Her condition is currently receptive to hormone therapies, but Professor Despes fears it could reoccur in the form that he lacks hormone receptors. He said, "I want to be ready for that. There is a deadline." Cannabis is a Class B drug that is illegal to have, give, or sell. If cannabis were discovered in an Amazon rainforest today, people would be clamoring to make as much use of it as they could for the potential benefits of the plant, said Donald L. Abrams, chief of hematology and oncology at San Francisco General Hospital, professor of medicine at the University of California. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that they are dragging their feet for big pharma. They are looking for ways to produce synthetic cannabinoids and synthetic big pharma patentable chemical compounds based on the natural cannabis extract compounds. It's all murder for money. 758,000 people will die this year alone in Canada and the United States because these people want to kill you for profit. And let's make it plain. This is murder for money. They've known since 1974 that this is the cure for cancer. And they're nothing but a bunch of lying bastards. Foot-dragging, big pharma shills. Now here's a story on Dr. Courtney's raw cannabis use. Dr. William L. Courtney has a solid medical education. After obtaining a doctorate in medicine at Wayne State University and doing his internship at the Psychiatry Medical Center of California, he obtained his postdoctorate on legal medicine. Dr. Courtney is currently a member of the American Academy of Cannabidiol Medicine and the International Association of Cannabis as Medicine and the Society of Clinical Cannabis. Furthermore, he also teaches continuing medical education courses in clinical cannabis. The favorite research field of this American doctor is daily use of cannabis with a 250 to 500 milligram intake of phytocannabinoids in the form of non-psychoactive acid, which the doctor considers to be essential nutrients. During the last years, Dr. Courtney has shown his investigations to many other doctors. During his speech, Cannabis Therapeutics in Rhode Island in April 2010 at the Institute of Molecular Psychiatry of Bonn, June 2010. The Institute of Advanced Studies, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, 2010 in November, or his speech at the International Cannabinoid Research Society in Chicago, July 2011. Dr. Courtney is also vice president of the Association of Luxembourgese de Méthodes Préventives, which uses his recipes for making raw cannabis juice. He also works with those cannabis dispensaries that want to offer cannabis juices to all their therapeutic users with serious diseases. He has started several medical research laboratories in California. Dr. Courtney's most interesting story about his wife, Christine Pasluski. Christine suffered from symptomatic lupus erythematosus for many years, an autoimmune disorder that damages the connective tissues of several organs. When her health status greatly improved after consuming raw marijuana juice every day, they were confident they had found a viable treatment for certain chronic diseases. Kristen used to take about 40 medicines every day, while today she only takes them occasionally for some specific symptoms. Although her gynecologist was skeptical at the beginning, even hostile to the idea of using cannabis as medicine, he subsequently stated, "It's a miracle, a story that deserves being told." After a medical evaluation, the gynecologist carefully studied Kristen's expedient to verify her previous health state. On the basis of her medical history, he claimed that Kristen was about to die, and any medical eminence could help her, could neither know what was happening nor how to proceed. That's why they contacted Dr. Courtney, who saved her life. Courtney initially prescribed her dry marijuana capsules and then gave her raw cannabis juice. Doctors had told Kristen that she could never have a baby. However, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl without any medical intervention or treatment for pain. Nowadays, Kristen and her daughter are healthy, strong, and radiant. Kristen Perluski truly believes that cannabis saved her life. She tells that when I take the marijuana juice, I feel more focused, more alert, I breathe better, I have neither heartburn nor gastric disorders. I don't feel muscle weakness or pelvic or back pains. Now that I feel good, my aim is to help other people with the same problem as mine. So they have all the information on raw cannabis juice. Dr. Courtney shares his wife's passion for helping others with marijuana and states, "I'm happy to know that my patients don't need medicines anymore, which cause them ulcers, stomach hemorrhages, or liver injuries that pain and anti-inflammatory medicines usually cause. We believe that spreading this information is worth fighting for. Why deprive someone of reducing the risk of a tumor, a heart attack, diabetes? Why indeed deprive somebody from these things? Well, I'll tell you why. Because of money. It's murder for money. That's what the AMA is. That's what the National Cancer Institute is. It's a business. $200 billion a year business. And they don't care how many children die of leukemia. They don't care how many people suffer needlessly. They love it. They love it because they're Satanists. At the top of this machine, you better believe it's Satanists. And the energy of human suffering feeds their gods. But that's another story. But I'm telling you right now, you're going to have to people are really going to have to step up to the plate and demand cannabis freedom in order to get this, because otherwise the corporations will never let it happen. Dr. Courtney continues, go and visit Amber. At age 2, she was diagnosed with end-stage brain tumor. With the classic treatment, she had a 10% chance to survive. After surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, tumors were still developing. The doctors recommended Amber's parents take her home and to wait for what's inevitable. A month later, Amber's parents started to notice a change. Of course, tumors were decreasing in size and number, and the family had started to make the juice with raw cannabis leaves, giving the child a few milliliters every day. The fact that such important institution like the National Cancer Institute has recently recognized the anti-tumor properties of cannabinoids shows that the situation is progressing at the highest level. But this issue has a dark side. If marijuana is finally and officially recognized as a beneficial plant, companies like Monsanto will soon create and distribute cannabis seeds genetically modified to be sterile and Roundup ready. Composition and therapeutic properties of raw cannabis juice. In natural form, cannabis is a supernutrient rich in essential nutrients capable of preventing and healing many diseases. Since we cannot synthesize these essential nutrients, essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, fibers, enzymes, vitamins, minerals, flavonoids, carotenoids, terpenes, without forgetting the renowned phytocannabinoid acids. Humans have an endogenous cannabinoid system that controls many cell functions. 525 different molecules have been identified in the cannabis plant. Some of them act as modulators, facilitating the regulation of cell physiology of the endogenous cannabinoid system. The main component found in raw cannabis plants is THCA, which, along with other phytocannabinoids, interact with the immune system. Recently harvested marijuana plants also contain cannabinoids, an acid form of THCA, CBDA, CBGA, which are non-psychoactive. Patients become euphoric with THC doses between 10 and 20 milligrams, while they can take complete doses of 200 to 1,000 of other non-psychoactive cannabinoids. Many patients don't tolerate THC due to its psychoactivity, which interferes with their daily activities. even when it does not improve several symptoms. When cannabis is ripe or heated, cannabinoids decarboxylate, which reduces the tolerable dose from 2,000 to 10 milligrams. The result is a loss of anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, antiproliferative, anti-cancerous properties of cannabinoids. THCA is a potent antagonist of the TRPA receptor and antagonist of the TRPM8 receptor. What could explain its analgesic action? Taking a prominent role in the treatment of prostate cancer, THCA has also anti-emetic properties and protects dopamine neurons from degeneration. What could be a great help for Parkinson's treatment? CBDA has the same properties as THCA in both TRPA1 and TRPM8 receptors, but it is also an antagonist of the TRPV1 receptor and an inhibitory of the COX2, an enzyme complex that is very important in the role of inflammations. CBDA also has the potential of fighting against the mutation of tumor cells, which are highly invasive in the MDA-MB231 breast cancer cell type. CBDA also has influence on the HT1A serotonin receptors that could partially explain its anti-nausea properties. Acid cannabinoids, CBDA and CBGA, are known for being strong antagonists of the GPR55 pro-inflammatory receptor. Thus, cannabinoid acids have anti-inflammatory properties 2 to 4 times more efficient than cannabinoids in neutral form, which have been studied for the last 30 years. We can still highlight another interesting property of acid cannabinoids. The acid carbolic group is hydrophile. What that means is these acid cannabinoids are partially soluble in water compared to the decarbonated cannabinoids, THC, CBD, which are not. The United States Patent Office states that some cannabinoids have useful therapeutic effects, which are not activated by cannabinoid receptors, and consequently don't have psychoactive effects. Furthermore, the absence of psychoactivity allows very high doses without non-desired side effects. Dr. Courtney claims that these cannabinoids help the regulatory system of our body to be more efficient. In summary, they are nutrients that help to better regulate the performance of our 210 types of body cells. We are not talking here about their use as medicine, but simply as essential nutrients. The best way to spread this message is to have good information and to know what one is talking about. One of the first reactions when speaking of using cannabis is identifying it with its psychoactive effects. Cannabis in natural form is not psychoactive. Since THC is in an acid form, THCA, this THCA can be carboxylated to psychoactive THC over time, drying, ripening, storing, and or, because it is heated, combustion, vaporizing, cooking. That's what turns the acid THC into the THC that gets people high. But without the heat, you don't get high and the cannabinoids get into your system. Dr. Courtney continues, if you heat the plant, you get decarboxylated THCA or THC, and you have psychoactive effects with only 10 milligrams of THC. If it is not heated, you can take from 500 to 600 milligrams of THCA, use it as an essential nutrient, and enjoy the antioxidant and neuroprotective properties that these high doses offer you. This spectacular increase of dose from 10 milligrams of psychoactive THC to 500 to 600 of non-psychoactive THCA, CBDA, CBGA, explains the difference between traditional medical cannabis and the new alternative daily use of cannabinoids. However, other substances of the plants, such as aromatic molecules, may affect mood and energy levels. Cannabis is an incredibly complex plant whose synergistic components are still not totally cataloged and studied. Meanwhile, it is up to every consumer to identify the most suitable strain to improve his or her health. The proportion of cannabinoids varies from one cannabis plant to another. However, we still don't have studies or analysis about which parts of the plant contain more or less specific cannabinoids. For this reason, it seems that most recommended way to consume it is using the entire plant, leaves and flowers. There are currently on the market different strains rich in CBD. The ideal CBD dose per person is 5 to 20 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. For a person weighing 70 kilograms, 7 grams of 5% CBD marijuana are needed as a dose of 5 milligrams CBD per kilogram body weight, while 35 grams of 1% CBD will be needed to consume the same amount of therapeutic cannabinoid. Cannabidiol, CBD, is a potent antioxidant for lipids, more efficient than vitamin E. That is why it is so useful preventing diseases caused by alcohol and radiations, as well as CNS, central nervous system diseases, myopathy, endocephalopathy. Since CBD is capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier and so acting as an antioxidant on brain neurons, CBD also has an anti-epileptic, anti-proliferative, and an anti-dystonia property. Decarboxylation of CBDA into CBD needs a slightly higher temperature than decarboxylation of THCA into THC. Therefore, if you want to transform the CBDA of a plant into CBD, you will have to transform this THCA into THC. The average THC dose for those who don't have problems with psychoactivity is 10 to 20 milligrams. If we make a juice of 10 grams of ripe marijuana bud with a 1-to-1 THC CBD ratio, 5%, we will get up to 500 milligrams of THCA and 500 milligrams of CBDA. If this juice is accidentally heated, a 500 milligram THC dose is received, and that is to say, approximately 50 times the needed dose to feel high. Raw marijuana juice preparation and conservation tips. Consuming marijuana in a natural form is the only way to enjoy all the benefits of the plant. Extracting its juice is the best way to use cannabis as a nutrient. But it is also possible to chew and swallow recently harvested fresh marijuana buds and leaves. Using a juice extractor is highly recommended when processing a large amount of leaves. While a blender will be perfect for shredding buds, using a blender for the buds instead of a juice extractor reduces the loss of cannabinoids since these are attached to the juice extractor filter. Recently harvested marijuana can be stored in airtight bags in the fridge for a couple of weeks. Once the juice is extracted, it can be stored either with ice in the fridge up to 3 days or in a freezer for several months. Before extracting the juice, it is recommended to clean the leaves and soak them in cold water for 5 minutes. Check that all leaves are perfectly clean before soaking them. Even if they are grown organically, our plants received any kind of, insecticides, fungicides, none. They are suitable for making cannabis juice. Buds have higher concentration of cannabinoids than leaves, and therefore are an excellent method of consumption if one has sufficient supplies. Both leaves and buds are extremely beneficial, but combining them is ideal. Cannabis buds must have their trichomes of milky color. There should not be any one amber. If you use plant leaves either in their growing or flowering stage, male plants from regular seeds, hermaphrodite plants, or even all the trimmings can be used to make raw marijuana juice. The main difficulty to supply ourselves with raw cannabis juice during all year is obviously having enough green matter for the whole year. It would be perfect germinating one marijuana seed every day or so. Over time, we can harvest one plant every day. And the optimum of juicing raw cannabis to achieve homeostasis is to do one plant a day. But we live in a society where medicine is illegal. To ensure the patients consume 250 to 500 milligrams of acid phytocannabinoids a day, Dr. Courtney recommends taking care with plants grown too close to indoor bulbs or to other possible heat sources. Sometimes when plants are too close from HPS bulbs, the heat produced by the lighting system can decarbox the THCA into THC. This could also happen in outdoor plants when they reach their flowering peak and the climate is too hot, although that is not usual. If you want to process an entire plant or a large amount of green matter, you should allow to cool your juice extractor from time to time. If your extractor is too hot, it may produce decarboxylated cannabinoids during the extraction. What will make your juice be psychoactive? A cup of hot marijuana juice is equal to several tens of joints, I'm sure. Hot cannabis juice. A winter treat. Dr. William Courtney recommends consuming oil from hemp seeds every day, salads with sprouted cannabis seeds, and 120 to 240 milliliters of raw cannabis juice divided into 5 doses, 500 milligrams of CBD cannabidiol. Dr. Courtney states that it is great because we use non-psychoactive cannabinoids, but that actually saturate the body, facilitating its regulation. According to him, this diet reduces the risks of cancer, heart attacks 66%, insulin-dependent diabetes 58%. No wonder it's illegal. The taste of raw cannabis juice is strong and green. so it is recommended to mix it with other fruit juices or foods: lemon juice, yogurt, oil from hemp seeds, fresh juice, fruits and vegetables, garlic, turmeric, and other spices, which will be perfect supplement for the cannabis juice. Dr. Courtney claims, I started to make marijuana juice with carrots. I took 4 every morning and 4 every afternoon. But after taking carrot juice for several months, my skin was starting to turn orange. That is why I now use broccoli and beet. Usually patients start taking 1 to 3 milligrams of fresh grinded buds to ensure that they are neither allergic to reactions nor psychoactivity. Once you're accustomed to this dose, it can be progressively increased from 10 to 15 grams of fresh raw cannabis daily. As a supplement, consume about 30 grams of fresh leaves every day, even more if you have sufficient plant production. The juice will be more efficient if we divide it in several intakes, since our body eliminates it fast, approximately 50 minutes after assimilation by the intestinal tract. If we have 300 milligrams of raw cannabis juice, we will make 5 intakes of 60 during each day, every 3 to 4 hours. Keep the juice with ice and shake it before using, so the fatty acids are evenly distributed in the watery part of the juice. Dr. Courtney warns those patients with kidney and gallbladder problems that cannabis juice in its natural form possesses some risks. Marijuana juice is not recommended for hyperkaluria and hyperexuria, whatever that is. Finally, Dr. Courtney points out that patients consuming medicines whose efficiency could be decreased by grapefruit or pomegranate juice should inform their doctor before starting a diet with cannabis juice. The same happens if patients use anticoagulants like Coumadin. Most leaves from the plants contain large proportions of vitamin K, which can impede the liver to metabolize these medicines. According to Dr. Courtney, some effects of raw cannabis juice may appear 3 days after first intake, while others can take a few weeks. We must consume raw cannabis juice from 4 to 8 weeks before noticing its beneficial properties. Since phytocannabinoids are slowly accumulated in fatty tissues, just like lymphatic vitamins A, D, E, and K. Marian Jurkovich, director of the Humboldt Patient Resource Center, notices a great improvement in the patient's health. She states that smoking marijuana lessened the pain in several patients, improved their quality of life, but that she could not actually observe a true improvement in their health. Raw cannabis, in its natural form, changed her point of view. She claims that while making the juice and cleaning the extractor means a lot of work, people that do it love it because they can see the results. And that's all I'm talking about. You can see the results. So I believe, without any shadow of a doubt, we should have total cannabis freedom. The Supreme Court in Mexico just recently said that prohibition of personal use of cannabis was unconstitutional and that the government had no right to stop people from using cannabis. So hopefully we're going to get a big pushback there, because once people in Mexico start growing and juicing cannabis for themselves, the health benefits are going to be staggering, and the big pharma murder machine will not be able to stop this.